I was a responsible 28-year-old who had been paying half the mortgage and all the utility bills while living with my mom. We had a comfortable arrangement for years after I graduated college. I had my own space, and things were peaceful until my world turned upside down one weekend. I returned home to find a stranger, and her 2 kids had moved into my bedroom. My own mother had chosen someone else over me despite everything I contributed to our home. Before I dive into how my own mother betrayed me, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see how I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken advantage of. After graduating from college with a marketing degree, I moved back into my childhood home with my mother, Linda. I was 28 now, working as a marketing associate at a local firm. The student loans had piled up during my education, and moving home seemed like the most financially responsible decision. My mother was 52 and had been struggling ever since her divorce from my father 10 years ago. She worked as a nurse at the regional hospital with irregular hours that often left her exhausted. Our financial arrangement was clear from the beginning. I paid half of the monthly mortgage payment, covered all the utilities, contributed to groceries, and handled any home repairs that came up. It was a fair deal considering I was able to live in my childhood home while paying down my student debt faster than if I had been renting an apartment in the city. Before everything fell apart, my mother and I had a close relationship. We would have movie nights on Sundays when neither of us was working, cooking meals together on her days off, and generally supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. I thought we had a solid understanding and mutual respect. My bedroom was my sanctuary. I had set it up exactly how I wanted with a gaming computer. I had saved up for months to build bookshelves filled with novels and textbooks from college and memorabilia from my childhood that meant a lot to me. I had spent time and money making it comfortable because I knew I would be living at home for several years while getting my finances in order. Everything changed when my mother introduced me to Jessica, a 42-year-old woman she knew from nursing school who had recently fallen on hard times. According to my mother, Jessica and her 2 children, Tyler, who was 10, and Amanda, who was 7, were facing eviction from their apartment after Jessica had some financial setbacks. I still remember that first conversation clearly. My mother sat me down in the living room one evening after dinner. "Daisy, Jessica really needs some help right now," she explained, her eyes pleading. "She has nowhere to go with the kids. It would just be for a few days until she can find a new place or get back on her feet." I was reluctant. Our house was not that big, just 3 bedrooms, one of which had been converted into a home office for my mother. I knew having 3 additional people would make things crowded. "Where would they even sleep?" I asked. "Well, they could take the living room," my mother suggested. "We could move the coffee table and set up the pull-out couch." I hesitated, but finally agreed, figuring it would only be for a short time. I could handle some temporary inconvenience to help someone in need. "All right, if it is just for a few days," I conceded. The problem started almost immediately after Jessica and her children moved in. The living room became their domain, with toys scattered everywhere, the television constantly tuned to cartoons, and bedding piled on the couch. The bathroom schedule became complicated, with 5 people sharing one shower. Jessica seemed to take over the kitchen too, her food filling the refrigerator, her dishes piling up in the sink. Working from home 2 days a week became nearly impossible with the noise of the children running through the house. Tyler and Amanda were nice kids, but they were loud and seemed to have unlimited energy. I found myself retreating to my bedroom more and more often just to find some peace. 2 weeks passed, and there was no sign that Jessica was actively apartment hunting. When I asked my mother about it casually over breakfast, she shrugged. "These things take time, Daisy. The rental market is tough right now." I nodded, trying to be understanding, but I was starting to feel the strain of having our space invaded. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a situation that would completely upend my life and relationship with my mother. As Jessica's stay extended to 1 full month, I noticed that not only was she not looking for a new place, she was not contributing anything to the household. She did not offer money for groceries despite her kids eating more than my mother and me combined. She rarely cleaned up after herself or her children. The living room had become a permanent bedroom, making it impossible to use that space for anything else. I finally decided to talk to my mother about establishing some boundaries and a more definite timeline. "Mom, I know Jessica and the kids need help, but it has been a month now. Have you talked to her about when they might be moving out?" I asked, as gently as possible one evening when we were alone in the kitchen. My mother instantly became defensive. "She is going through a really tough time, Daisy. They literally have nowhere else to go right now. I understand that, but we cannot keep living like this indefinitely. The house is too small for 5 people, and it is affecting my work. Plus, is she contributing anything to the household expenses?" "She will when she gets back on her feet," my mother insisted. "She is my friend, and I cannot just throw her and her children out on the street." I dropped the subject for the time being, not wanting to cause an argument, but the situation continued to deteriorate. The real betrayal came while I was away on a business trip. I had to travel to Chicago for a long weekend conference, leaving on Thursday and returning late Sunday night. When I got home exhausted from travel, and looking forward to sleeping in my own bed, I found my bedroom door open, and unfamiliar voices coming from inside. Walking in, I froze in shock. My bed was occupied by Tyler and Amanda, who were bouncing on it while watching a tablet. My desk had been cleared of my computer equipment, my bookshelves were empty, and my closet door was open, revealing Jessica's clothes hanging where mine should have been. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice strained. The kids looked up, not at all concerned by my obvious distress. "Mommy says this is our room now," Amanda explained happily. I turned and stormed downstairs, finding my mother and Jessica sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee and chatting as if everything was normal. "Mom, can I talk to you?" "Alone," I demanded. My mother followed me to the back porch, looking uncomfortable but not apologetic. "Why are Jessica and her kids in my room? Where are all my things?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. "I moved your stuff to the basement," she replied. "Jessica and the kids need a proper room, Daisy. They cannot keep sleeping in the living room. The basement is perfectly fine. I set up the old futon down there for you." I could not believe what I was hearing. "You moved all my belongings without even asking me." "That is my room. I pay half the mortgage and all the utilities in this house, but they need the space more than you do," my mother argued. "The kids need stability. The basement is perfectly fine for a grown man." I was stunned by her complete disregard for my feelings or my contributions to the household. "You should have discussed this with me before making that decision." "I knew you would overreact," she sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. I went down to the basement to find my belongings haphazardly piled in corners. My computer had been disconnected and placed on an old card table, my clothes were stuffed into cardboard boxes rather than hung up, and my books were stacked in piles on the floor. The basement was damp, with concrete floors and walls and a single bulb for lighting. It was unfinished and uncomfortable, nothing like my bedroom upstairs. I spent that night on the lumpy futon, seething with anger and hurt. The next morning, I confronted my mother again, while Jessica was getting her kids ready for school. "This is completely unfair," I told her. "I pay half the bills in this house, and you moved me to the basement without even consulting me." "Jessica is going through a difficult time," my mother repeated her standard defense. "Her ex-husband cut off child support, and she needs help. It is just temporary." "You said that a month ago. How long is temporary?" My mother avoided the question, but I could see that Jessica had no intention of leaving anytime soon. She had settled in taking over not just my room but increasingly the entire house. Her entitled attitude was evident in the way she used our things without asking, left messes for others to clean up, and made no effort to contribute. The next week in the basement was miserable. I could barely sleep on the uncomfortable futon. The dampness aggravated my allergies. There was no privacy, as the washing machine and dryer were down there, meaning people came and went at all hours. Working from home became impossible due to the poor internet connection in the basement and the constant noise from above. To make matters worse, when I went upstairs one day to grab lunch, I discovered Tyler playing with my gaming controllers, which had been specifically moved to the basement for my use. Several of my collectible action figures that I had kept since childhood were broken on the floor, and Amanda had spilled juice on some of my books. When I brought this up to my mother, she dismissed it. "They are just kids, Daisy. They do not know any better." "Then they should not be playing with my things," I insisted. "Those collectibles were worth money, and some of them cannot be replaced." "It is not a big deal," she replied clearly, more concerned with keeping Jessica happy than respecting my possessions or feelings. The final breaking point came about 2 weeks after I had been relegated to the basement. I was coming upstairs to get a glass of water late one night when I overheard my mother and Jessica talking in the kitchen. They did not hear me on the stairs, so I paused when I caught fragments of their conversation. "How long do you think before you can start job hunting again?" my mother was asking. Jessica sighed dramatically. "I do not know, Linda. The job market in my field is so tight right now. I lost that position at the clinic 4 months ago, and there is just nothing out there." My blood ran cold. 4 months ago, Jessica had been unemployed for 4 months, not recently, as my mother had led me to believe. And from the sound of it, she was not actively looking for work. "Well, you and the kids are welcome to stay as long as you need," my mother assured her. "At least through next year if necessary. The school district here is so much better for the kids anyway." Next year I could not believe what I was hearing. They had been planning on Jessica staying long-term all along while telling me it was just temporary. I stepped into the kitchen, making both women jump. 4 months. Unemployed. Planning to stay through next year. "Were you ever going to tell me any of this?" I asked, looking directly at my mother. Jessica had the decency to look embarrassed, but my mother immediately became defensive. "We were just discussing possibilities, Daisy. Nothing is decided yet." "Sounds pretty decided to me," I replied. "You two have been lying to me this entire time." "I have not lied," my mother insisted. "The situation has just evolved." "Evolved? You moved me to the basement without asking me. You let her kids destroy my property. I pay half the mortgage on this house, and all of the utilities." Jessica stood up. "I should give you two some privacy," she said, slipping out of the kitchen. Once she was gone, my mother's expression hardened. "This is my house, Daisy. My name is on the mortgage, so I decide who stays where." "I pay half that mortgage," I reminded her. "I have been keeping this household afloat for years. I was managing before you moved back in, and I will manage if you leave," she shot back. Her words hit me like a physical blow. After all my contributions, all my support, she was essentially telling me I was dispensable while Jessica and her children were not. In that moment, I made my decision. "Fine. If that is how you feel, I will leave." My mother looked surprised, as if she had not expected me to stand up for myself. "Do not be dramatic, Daisy." "I am not being dramatic. I am making a choice just like you did when you chose Jessica over me." I went back down to the basement and began packing what remained of my belongings. As I sorted through my things, I called my friend Alex, who immediately offered me his spare room until I could find a place of my own. When I came upstairs with my first load of boxes, my mother was waiting, looking concerned for the first time. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Exactly what I said I would do. I am leaving. And just so we are clear, I will not be paying any more bills for this house. Not the mortgage, not the utilities, not anything." The color drained from her face as the financial reality sank in. "You cannot just stop paying your share. We had an agreement. An agreement you broke when you moved me to the basement, without consulting me," I replied. "You said you would manage without me, so now you can try." "After everything I have done for you, this is how you repay me?" she asked, trying to make me feel guilty. I shook my head. "What about everything I have done for you, Mom? Paying bills, handling repairs, being there whenever you needed me. You took all of that for granted. You are overreacting," she insisted. "We can work something out. Maybe we can convert the office back into a bedroom for you." But I was done. "You made your choice. Now I am making mine." The rest of that evening was tense and emotional as I continued bringing boxes out to my car. Jessica stayed in my former bedroom, only emerging once to get snacks for her kids. She had a smug expression that made my blood boil, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing how upset I truly was. My mother alternated between angry accusations and teary pleas as the reality of my departure sank in. By the time I carried out the last of my belongings, she seemed genuinely worried, perhaps finally realizing the consequences of her actions. "Please do not do this," she said, as I headed for the door one final time. "You did this, Mom," I replied quietly. "Not me." As I drove away that night heading toward Alex's place, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was anger and hurt, of course, but also a surprising sense of relief and determination. For the first time in years, I was standing up for myself and my own worth. The first month on my own was financially stressful. I had been putting most of my income toward paying down my student loans and contributing to the household, leaving little in savings. Now I had to readjust my entire budget to accommodate rent and living expenses. Alex was incredibly supportive, charging me minimal rent for his spare room and giving me space to process everything that had happened. After a few weeks of job hunting, I found a small apartment with Kevin, a coworker who needed a roommate after his previous one moved out. Meanwhile, my mother began her campaign to get me to return home. It started with guilt-laden text messages about how she could not afford the mortgage payment on her own. When those did not work, she enlisted family friends to call me, explaining how stressed and upset she was. When that strategy failed, she switched to angry voicemails accusing me of abandoning her. I maintained my boundaries through it all. I would respond to her messages calmly, but firmly explaining that I was not coming back and that she needed to figure out her finances without me. About 6 weeks after I moved out, I got a particularly desperate call from my mother. "The electricity is about to be shut off," she admitted. "I cannot afford all these bills without your help, Daisy." "What about Jessica?" I asked. "Is she contributing anything?" There was a long pause. "She is looking for work," my mother said weakly. "So that is a no," I replied. "Mom, you chose her over me. You prioritized her and her children above your own son, who was paying half your bills. These are the consequences of that choice." It was harsh, but necessary. For too long, I had enabled my mother's poor decisions by always being there to bail her out. 3 months after I left, my mother called with news that changed everything. "Jessica moved out yesterday," she said, her voice small and defeated. "What happened?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "She never found a job. I asked her to contribute to the bills since you left, and she got angry. Said she thought I was helping her out of friendship, not expecting anything in return." The irony was not lost on me. Jessica had done to my mother exactly what my mother had done to me, taking her generosity for granted and giving nothing in return. "I am sorry it turned out this way," I said, meaning it, despite everything. "I made a terrible mistake, Daisy," my mother admitted, her voice breaking. "I betrayed your trust. I took advantage of everything you contributed to this house. I put someone else above my own son. I understand now why you left, and I do not blame you." It was the first genuine apology she had offered, and it meant something to me, though it could not instantly repair the damage done to our relationship. "I appreciate you saying that, Mom," I told her. "Would you consider coming home?" she asked hopefully. "No," I replied gently but firmly. "I have my own place now, and I am doing well. But I would like to work on rebuilding our relationship, if you are willing to respect my boundaries." We started slowly meeting for coffee once a week in neutral locations. I was clear about my expectations: respect, honest communication, no manipulation. Gradually, as she showed she could honor these boundaries, we progressed to dinner at her house occasionally, and then regular Sunday meals together. 6 months after moving out, I received a promotion at work that came with a significant pay raise. I was thriving in my independence, building my career, and even starting to look at purchasing my own small home in the next year or two. My relationship with my mother improved gradually as she demonstrated genuine change. She never again tried to manipulate me with guilt or emotional appeals. When she needed help with something, she asked respectfully, acknowledging that I had the right to say no. The most important lesson I learned through this painful experience was about self-worth. For years, I had allowed myself to be taken for granted, thinking that sacrificing my own needs was what you did for family. What I finally understood was that family relationships must be reciprocal, built on mutual respect and consideration. Standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary and healthy. I also learned the importance of boundaries. Before I had few, if any, boundaries with my mother. Now I had clear ones that I enforced consistently. The result was not a damaged relationship, as I had feared, but a healthier one, based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. My mother learned too. She acknowledged that she had taken me for granted for years, assuming I would always be there to support her financially regardless of how she treated me. She expressed genuine regret for choosing Jessica over me, and for the disrespect she had shown by moving me to the basement without discussion. Today, our relationship is better than it ever was before, precisely because we had to rebuild it on a foundation of honesty and respect, rather than obligation and habit. I still help my mother out occasionally with household projects or expenses, but now it is my choice, freely given, rather than expected or demanded. The hardest lesson I learned was that love without respect is not really love at all. By walking away, I not only saved myself, but ultimately saved my relationship with my mother too. I wonder if you have ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your self-respect. Have you had to establish boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about standing up for yourself. Your support means the world to me, and I hope my experience helps someone else find the courage to value themselves. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes walking away is the only way to find your way back to a healthier relationship.